But Connor, maybe cover your ears for this one. Probably the best HLTV fantasy player we've had ever. Please welcome to the stage, it's Lucy.
Hello everyone, Happy New Year. It's so good to be back. T1 Counter-Strike is back. I hope you enjoyed the player break. And I hope you've been enjoying Blast Bounty. I think it's been a really fun event to watch all these new rosters in play, all the different change-ups. And for me personally, it was really special to watch Imperial play and to see so much of the community kind of get behind them. So I'm really excited to watch them going into Katowice. But for Blast, we've now got our first fantasy event season with the playoffs for Bounty. And it's an interesting one, right? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a little hard to get all the info, but I think that the bounty system for the seeding is going to be in play into the playoffs, including like the final like semis and everything. So that means that it's a little bit harder to predict who's going to be playing who. We can obviously insinuate, based on the strengths of the teams, but it does mean there's a little bit of, I guess, randomness. So I would say that a true 1-1-1-1-1 draft might be a better way to start the season versus a 2-2-1 draft, just because we don't really know who's going to match up with who. We can kind of guess, where this will play out. My expectation would be BetBoom as the low seed. We'll probably pick either G2 or Na'Vi. Probably G2. Pain will then pick whoever's probably left. There's maybe a long shot they pick one of the other two, but I would anticipate we end up with Vitality versus Eternal Fire and Spirit versus Heroic. No one wants to pick Spirit, right? So Heroic will end up with that matchup. So in my view, I think Vitality and Spirit are the safest teams to draft here, just based on how the seeding will work. And I think that will apply going into the playoff as well, that they're the teams that people won't pick into. So that would be my guess. But honestly, just wait until you see who picks who. But remember that bounty system will be in play for the second stage too. So maybe try and play it a little safer with this one, which I will do. I'm going to do a 2-1-1-1-1, telling you straight up. Anyway, let's get into the fantasy stuff, guys. Let's take a look at players. As per always, Spirit are an incredible pick. I think the standouts for me here are probably Magix and Zontix. Magix's form's been pretty good lately, but the teams they've been playing have been relatively weak, like one-sided games. So I'm not sure if he's that valuable, but Zontix, I'm back on Zontix, guys. 205k for Zontix. That is a really good deal. I think Donk is going to be very good this event. I think Donk and Zaiwu both are worth picking for the golds, but they're probably the only golds I would go for in this event with the pricing of some of these silvers, like Zontix, like Heavy God, for instance, who again, I think he's in the topmost pick because he had a really good debut. And even though G2, I don't think are going to get past the semis at best, I don't think they get to the grand final, for instance, he's probably going to deliver for that price point. And I wouldn't get like Monacy or Malbs over him. I think Hunter remains a very solid choice for 194. There's not a lot of good value at this price point, so he's great, especially when Snacks is like 188, and Snacks is not a good choice. Don't pick Snacks. You could get Chopper, you could get Alexi. Either is better than Snacks. Navi's pricing is difficult for me. I think it's really hard to pick these players because there's stars on the other teams that are like the same price, and the problem with Na'Vi is you're never sure which player's gonna pop off. I guess Bit's been the most consistent, so there's maybe a case for him. And I think Wonderful at 209 is a little bit better value than JL and Imma, but it's kind of tough with their pricing. I'm more interested in other teams, but I don't know, there's something about Na'Vi at the moment that feels uninspiring, but then they're still Na'Vi, so they're still probably good. Vitality feel very exciting, and I think Rops obviously stands out, 213. That's kind of been about where he's been for a while, but on this roster, I think he's going to do well. And you feel like he's a better choice than Flamesy, especially because Flames had a bit of a rough first series with Vitality, so Rops feels better. Messi has been playing really good this year. I mean, again, very small sample size, but he is a lot cheaper, so you could double up Rops Messi. Feels pretty good. And Apex, again, I think Apex might be, well, I'd say second best IGL you can choose here. I would say Chopper's maybe a little bit safer just because role activation and Spirit are a stronger team. I think Pain is interesting. I think they're going to have a very tough time of things, but they could surprise. And I think the two players that jump out to me here are Davideus, 190,000 for this guy. brilliant price for him. I think he's a real sleeper pick, and I think he's better value than, say, Chopper or Hunter or, any of these players that are in that same price point. The question is, do they get to play more than one game? And because of the format, that's the only thing that kind of puts me off him. Snow is maybe a little bit more enticing just because of that. I think he's starting to find himself in the last 6 months on this team, and we're seeing a bit more of the promise of this player. And yeah, I think for 178, he's not a huge risk for that price point. If you're wanting to take a cheap player somewhere and you're not just going for kind of like a chicken out combo, he could actually still deliver and give you a lot of money. Eternal Fire, I think, are very cool. I actually, this Jota pickup is amazing for this team. They've gone from like top 15 to a consistent top 10 team in my eyes for this year. I think this team is going to be so strong. The firepower in the rifling core is so good now with Jota, who is just an excellent anchor player to take over Calix's spots, way more consistent. And then McCarty is back in phenomenal form. So I'm very excited about this team. Am I going to draft them? No. But I think that they'd be a really cool team if you're going for like a combo to get, say, Magia and Lucadia, for instance, or Magia, Xantares, and then double Spirit. That's really cool. Bet Boom only exists here to chicken out, and so the only player you're picking is Nafany, and you're chickening out on him. They're playing with 2 stand-ins for this. You do not want to draft them. Heroics also got a stand-in situation, and also I don't think we see them. They've got the worst seed, so they're going to have to play Spirit. I love the organization, and I love what they're doing. Sora's a brilliant coach, but this team is not going to win their game versus Spirit, and so again, I would not be touching them, unfortunately, just because of the format. So for my draft, I'm going to go back to some familiar favorites. I mentioned I'm going to do a 2-1-1-1-1 draft. It's an extra one. Chopper, Zontix is my combo, and I want them in that order because it looks nicer. Zontix for 205 is the cheapest I think I've seen him in ages, and he used to be a must pick for me, so I'm happy with this. And yes, I'm missing out on Donk, but if Donk wins, I win. Even if Donkers win a little bit harder than me, I'll make up that value elsewhere. Because I'm going to grab a star from the other team that I think makes it to the grand final. I think it's going to be Spirit versus Vitality. And I'm going to grab Zyru, which might feel a little bit risky. And also you might be a bit questioning, like, why would you get Zyru over Donk? That 5k is actually super important, and I wouldn't be able to get him, basically, without making serious sacrifices elsewhere. This is where I've gone. And I still think Zyru is going to be, like, underpicked because Donk's going to be so picked, so I don't hate it. I want to grab Heavy God as well, just because I do want some star power from G2. And his price is, again, really, really good. I feel like I can't pass up on it. And I also feel in this G2 squad, while it's going through this transition period where they're kind of working out what they're doing, they've got role changes, Malbs taking on that Nico position. Heavy God is a much more passive closer style player. And I think in a team with like Snacks, Hunter, Malbs, dying, Heavy God has a lot of opportunity to get kills. I don't know if that makes sense. That's my logic anyway. 170 left. You know what's happening. We're grabbing Nafany. He's for chicken out. We're not worried about him. It's these 4. They're going to carry us through. It's kind of safe, but I've kind of found a way, I feel, of getting it a little bit of an edge of difference over on a lot of other teams. So that's my team. Guys, we're going into it with a Zyru draft to kick things off. New year. New fantasy league. Let's try and do better than last season. I think I finished like 6th or 7th, maybe worse. I don't remember. I want to finish number 1. I always want to finish number 1, but we want top 5 at least. And I think starting with a nice bit of consistency here is the way to do it. So let me know what you're drafting. And as always, good luck.